So yeah, I'll give you just a 10,000 foot level of what we do. So I've got 12 people here that work for me.
Okay.
With that, we're trying to hire one more person. We've got
Okay.
5 acquisitions that
Okay.
strictly deal with the sellers. We spend about $25,000 to $30,000 a month in pay-per-click, bringing leads in. We also spend another sizable amount. I think it's $10,000 or $15,000 a month on mailers, just strictly for land. Land, you can do the same thing, buy it and sell or finance it back out. So it still produces cash flow. As long as it's giving me mailbox money, I don't care where it comes from.
I hear you.
Then I have a team of 3 people that deal with dispositions. One of them is strictly dealing with the novation side of it because not everything fits in the portfolio. If it won't cash flow, I don't want it. I have another young lady that deals strictly with my lease with options. We typically do a 5-year lease. I really want to season them. Okay. But then if they exercise their option, I'll turn it into seller financing. I always give them an agreement for sale. I never give them the deed. And I always put them through the SAFE Act, Dodd-Frank. So I'm having a third-party underwriter do all the underwriting. I will pre-qualify them, but then it's about $125 or so for me to put them through an application, and I have to pay that up front. And then it's another $500 or $600 to get the paperwork to show that yes, they do qualify. And then I can charge that back at closing to them. So I get my $600-700 back at closing. So that's how I always do it. Being a professional investor, I want to make sure that I'm keeping my ass out of jail by putting them through Dodd-Frank.
Yeah.
Dealing with the trust and stuff, I don't know enough of the laws to even say anything. But to me, what you told me right there, they have equitable interest in that property. In Arizona, if a tenant can prove they have equitable interest and they want to leave, they will force the landlord to pay them up to triple what they have paid you as a fine.
Wow.
That's any down payment money or any rent money that they have paid. So we don't do any equitable interest at all until it gets to the seller financing. And then they've been underwritten by a third-party underwriter. No one in my office does it. And we pay to have it done. That's how my attorneys have taught me to do it and keep my butt clean. When we do the 5 years, the reason why I do 5 years is usually if they're coming to me and they're doing the lease option. So I like doing the lease options up front because I get the big down payment of usually an average of $15,000. You probably heard me on talking to Steve that yes, I will do the option fee assistance program. Depending on the house size, I usually won't take anything less than $5,000 because usually if you're dealing with a $100,000 house, $5,000 is a lot of money to them. Okay. I need skin in the game. Then I'll do a payment plan for the other $10,000. Okay. No less than $250 a month. Then I get the monthly lease payment every single month. Usually when they're coming to us, they have usually a problem with their finances, maybe new on the job, maybe it's their credit, whatever. So then we help them get all that fixed. Usually that takes a minimum of 2 years and usually up to 3 years. Dodd-Frank, my underwriter likes to see 2 years of consistency. So if they have bad credit and it takes them 2 years or 2.5 years to get back to no derogatories, no charge off, no collections, now I need 2 years of good credit. So that's why we do 5. At the end of the 5, usually they have it all set up and they have good credit history and going good. They've been on their job long enough, that kind of thing, that we go ahead and get them qualified. So Dodd-Frank, my underwriter wants to see 2 years of consistent employment with the same employer or same field. They want to see 2 years of consistent good credit. Doesn't have to have a high credit score, but just no derogatories. They need to see a little bit of credit, and a cell phone bill, a utility bill will work as credit, and then they want to see the income. That's the main 4 that my underwriters want to see. That's why we do 5 years.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah,
when you're setting up, is that something that you're having them see the underwriter and start that process if they're at the beginning stages of doing a lease option, or is that after the 5-year? Okay.
After the 5 years, usually about 4.5 years in,
Yeah.
my assistant is contacting them to see if they're ready to exercise their option.
If
they aren't, then we just roll the whole lease and option over for another year. And we do 1-year renewals.
Okay.
So they don't lose the option fee.
And are they taking care of all maintenance and repairs at the beginning of the lease option stage? Oh, fantastic. All right, cool.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So I have probably one of the best attorneys when it comes to contract law.
Yeah.
He writes it for all over the nation, but I've spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars with him. There are some twists, but the way we do it, I don't know how you've been taught, but we do a lease and we do an option, 2 separate pieces of paper. The option is tied to the lease, but the lease is not tied to the option. Meaning that if they default on the lease, the option goes away. When you go into a court of law with the landlord-tenant laws, they can only bring the lease in. They can't bring the option because they're not tied together. It's 2 separate pieces of paper. So that's where the equitable interest does not play in. Nowhere in our paperwork does it say that any of the rents or option ever goes towards the purchase price. That keeps us away from equitable interest too.
Mm-hmm.
With the trust, the way you just described it to me, they have equitable interest.
Right.
That was a problem here in Arizona, especially.
Yeah, they do. And there is language in the trust docs that states, like, obviously, like, if they default, so if they miss 30 days behind on a payment, it moves into an immediate default. But I do see how the argument is obviously still there, right? Like, if it goes to court, they could say, hey, look, I had interest for X amount of period until I missed this payment, right? So
yes.
Yeah.
And so even with seller financing, like when you go to do foreclosures, there are laws in certain states that if they've been paying in for X amount of time and have X amount of money in, you can only foreclose on a portion of it. It's weird. So, having the documentation behind that yes, I'm not doing predatory lending, that kind of thing, because I had them underwritten out with a third party, not in my office. I didn't do predatory lending. They qualified. Here's the documentation that shows that they qualified, that kind of stuff. Now they can't argue with it. And it's a lot easier process if I have to go that far.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. There are certain things that do make me a little bit uncomfortable about the way I'm doing things now. So
yeah,
for sure. So
that, and then a lot of times we will put stuff under a contract, and we will do a pre-marketing ploy to find out what kind of interest we get. If we get good interest, then at that point I turn around and do the home inspection, go ahead and close on it. A lot of times we already have the option fee in our hip pocket, and the tenant's ready to move in the minute we close on it. So that's kind of our process.
I love that. It's only recently that I started doing that, because I had a few properties that I thought were going to be successful and took longer. You're carrying the holding costs and all that stuff. So I do love that concept. It's like way better for sure. Yeah. So I see a lot of things in line with what you're doing and what I'm doing. I think I'd like to take a crack at what you're doing.